So let's talk about the threat of terrorism. Now, no doubt that, this threat is always kind of referred to as, radical Islamic terrorism, and it's overblown a lot of times by politicians, pundits, and the media. However, there is a real threat posed, there's a very real threat from, groups like ISIL and Al-Qaeda. How do we respond to the threat of terrorism? How would you respond as president to that threat?
First, I deal with state-sponsored terrorism that our government has been involved with for the last over 200 years. Secondly, I would deal with domestic internal terrorism. They're a bigger threat to me personally than any of the two you mentioned. And thirdly, I would have allies within the Islamic community. They're not for those people. And then fourth, I would acknowledge and be honest about the role the current government played in producing and arming ISIL and everyone else. So we have to, that love thing that I talked about earlier, we got to be loving and honest about the role the United States government has played in making these folks our enemy, and how they currently keep jumping into Abrahamic wars that they have no business being involved with. This is about love, honesty, and truth. We created every enemy we have by our actions and our behaviors. We need to stand up to it, own up to it, and correct it.
Dr. Kemp-Mesplay.
Yeah, I would advocate for working with leadership in the Islamic community. So I echo that. And we need authentic Islam, not this perverted, corrupted Islam. Those who are Muslim do not overwhelmingly support such acts of terrorism. They as well are horrified, but it is convenient for the United States and others, in part because of our militaristic ways, to paint with a broad brush and portray basically all Islamic people as being terrorists, which is untrue, unkind, and ineffective overall. Thank you.
I just want to remind people that more people were killed by toddlers since 9/11 than have been killed by so-called Islamic terrorists. And it's important to remember where this threat of Islamic terrorism came from. This was created by the CIA and the Saudis in order to fight the Russians in Afghanistan. And the Saudis went on to continue their madrasas, which is where global terrorists are trained. Our war in Iraq and Syria and Libya has fanned the flames of ISIS, which is where this supposed threat is coming from now. But we can nip that threat in the bud right now by stopping the arming and the funding of it.
Okay. Our final question here in foreign policy is to Dr. Kemp-Mesplay. The so-called threat from Russia has loomed pretty large in foreign policy and the discussions thereof. How would your interaction with the Russian government differ from the course taken by President Obama, and what tools would you utilize to work better with our international partners throughout the world?
It would be helpful to find common ground for the eagle and the bear to come together, because we do have so much in common as people. Mark Twain had commented on this because he was a great writer, and he talked about rivers. And I think that actually, if my memory serves, that has resonated with Russian people because of the importance of rivers. What I've been saying for a long time is that, in effect, we have a common enemy that can bring humanity together. It's just not regularly discussed. And it's not a true enemy, so it's something that people don't really recognize because they haven't been taught how to recognize it. And that enemy, if you will, is climatic instability. This really is the World War III of our time, and we are within the middle of it. The last years on record are the hottest years on record. And my concern is that we're past the tipping point regarding climate change, regarding CO2 in the atmosphere. So, if Russia is our enemy, then friends close and enemies closer, right? We really need to work together. And this is part of the transforming toward a peaceful international environment by, the biblical saying is, pounding swords into plowshares. When we do that, Russia and the United States can lead the rest of the world away from militarism and toward ensuring that we all live sustainably and securely. Thank you.
Jill Stein.
Our foreign policy towards Russia is another case of a marketing strategy on behalf of the weapons industry. when you look at what's been going on there, and you can start with the placement of missiles and nuclear weapons. We promised Gorbachev at the time that East Germany was reunified and became part of NATO, that NATO would not move 1 inch to the east. Well, NATO is encroaching all around Russia, so Russia would be nuts not to feel that this is really threatening. The policy, the strategy has been called baiting the bear. It doesn't end well. We need to stop this and start acting as a collaborator rather than a dominator in foreign policy.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Moyowasafe Curry.
Thank you. Like China, Russia's an old civilization, and it's a lack of respect that our government has shown to them. And again, we need to step back and reconnect and understand we're the baby here. And all this yelling and screaming and acting up and not allowing a president of a full country that we have a lot in common with, climate change, not to come to the White House, not to be involved in a dialogue and discussion, shows immaturity of our government. In the first 100 days, he would be invited, and whoever their democratically elected leader would be.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Fascinating. We could go on and on this, but sadly we got to move on.